please use the FOIL method to multiply parenthesis 5x minus 3 parenthesis 3x plus 1 parenthesis. And let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's talk about this question. So we use the FOIL method to multiply two binomials together. And the F stands for first, the O stands for outer, the I stands for inner, and the L stands for last. So we want to start here by multiplying the first term in each binomial. So in other words, we're going to start by doing 5x times 3x. So 5x times 3x is 15x squared, right? So that takes care of the first. So now we're going to take care of the O, the outer. So now we're going to multiply 5x and 1. So 5x times 1 is just 5x. So now what I'm going to do is take care of the inner terms, right? So I have minus 3 times 3x. And it's important not to forget about this minus sign here. So what is minus 3 times 3x? Well, that becomes minus 9x. All right, so now we have to do the last, right? So we're going to do minus 3 times plus 1, which is just going to be minus 3. So now what I have here is 15x squared plus 5x minus 9x minus 3. And what I can do now is combine the like terms. So 5x minus 9x becomes minus 4x, right? So the correct answer here is going to be 15x minus 4x minus 3. So B is the correct answer. For which value of x is the expression 33 over 6x plus 24 undefined? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so to solve this question, what we want to do is take the denominator. In other words, we want to take what's down here in the bottom of our fraction, and we want to set it equal to 0. So we have 6x plus 24, and we want to set it equal to 0. And we want to solve for x. So in other words, we want to get x by itself on one side of the equation. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to start by subtracting 24 from both sides. So when I do that, the 24s cancel out on the left side. So I'll have 6x equals negative 24. So what's the next step here? Well, the next step is to divide by 6 on both sides. So when I divide by 6 on both sides, what I get is x equals negative 4. And that's our answer. Now you might be wondering, why does this make sense? Well, if I have this x equals negative 4, right? If I come back up here into my denominator and I plug negative 4 in for x, what's going to happen is that I'm going to get a 0 in my denominator. And there's a rule in math that you can't divide by 0. So if you have a calculator nearby and you want to, you can just put in any random number. Put in 999 or 2102. Doesn't matter, just put in any random number and try to divide by 0 and see what happens, right? So there's a rule in math that we can't divide by 0, and the idea here is that if you put negative 4 in for x, you're going to get a 0 in the denominator, all right? So C is the correct answer, but the most important takeaway that I want you to get is that to solve a question like this, you have to take the denominator. In other words, you have to take what's down here in the bottom of the fraction, set it equal to 0, and solve for x, and that's going to give you the right answer. Rachel earned $22 more than double Monica's pay last month. If the total amount Rachel earned last month was $2,100, how much did Monica earn last month? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. So the first sentence here tells us that Rachel earned $22 more than double Monica's pay. So we can write the equation R equals 22 plus 2m. Now we already know what R equals, right? We know that R equals 2,100 because the question says if the total amount Rachel earned last month was 2,100. So we can replace r in the equation with 2,100. So when I do that, here's what I'll get. I'll have 2,100 equals 22 plus 2m. And the name of the game here is to get the m by itself. So to do that, I'm going to start by subtracting 22 from both sides. So if I do 2,100 minus 22, I get 2,078. So when I rewrite this, I'll have 2,078 equals 2m. So now what I want to do is divide by 2 on both sides here. And when I do that, I see that m equals 1,039. So the correct answer here is D. Which graph below does not represent a function? Is the answer A, B, or C? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, just unpause it, and we'll talk about this. Okay, so what you should know here is that a function relates an input to an output, and you can look at a graph and tell if you have a function using the vertical line test. So basically, if a vertical line touches the graph more than once, we know it's not a function. So let me show you what I mean here. So let's start with A here. So if I just draw a vertical line, a line going up and down here, we see that my line only touches the graph once. All right, same with C, right? So if I draw vertical lines, we see that each line that I draw only touches the graph one time. Now let's look at B. So if I draw a vertical line here, we see that it's going to touch the graph once right here and a second time right here. So if a vertical line touches the graph more than once, we know it's not a function. So we know that B is not a function. So this is how the vertical line test works, and you can use this whenever you need to look at a graph and see if you have a function or not. Jeff's soccer team played 15 games last year and won 9. Jeff played in each game. What percentage of the games did the team lose last year? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so when I teach percent questions, I often cover the formula, part over whole equals percent over 100, and it's totally up to you to decide if you want to use this formula when you take the test or not, but I like to use it when I teach how to get percent questions right. So I'm going to show you how to do it using this formula here. Now, the whole is going to be the bigger number, so I'm going to plug 15 into the formula for whole. But what do I plug in here for part? Well, we need to figure out the percentage of games that the team lost. So let's do 15 minus 9, because we know that the team played 15 games and that they won 9. So if I do 15 minus 9, I'll figure out that they lost 6 games. So 6 goes in here for part. So to get the question right now, what I want to do is 6 divided by 15 times 100. All right, and when I do that, I see that the answer is 40%. So if you picked answer choice A, don't feel bad by any means since we're just practicing right now. We don't care if you got this right or wrong. It's all about the learning and the practice for right now. But if you picked answer choice A, most likely what you did was you did 9 divided by 15 times 100. So just note here that what we want to do is we want to do 15 minus 9 first because we want to know the number of games that the team lost. Ross earned 71 more than triple Joey's pay last month. In total, Ross and Joey earned $4,659 last month. How much did Joey earn last month? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's go over the answer now. So there are a couple different ways to approach this question. Here's how I want to approach it. So what I'm going to do here is start by taking the piece of information that tells us Ross earned 71 more than triple Joey's pay last month. So I'm going to write the equation R equals 71 plus 3J. So again, this R equals 71 plus 3J, that just comes from the information we get in the first sentence here. So Now I'm going to write a second equation. So the second equation that I'm going to write is r plus j equals 4,659. And this just comes from the second sentence here where it tells us in total, Ross and Joey earned 4,659 last month. So what I can do now is come back up here to this first equation, this r equals 71 plus 3j, and I can replace the r in my second equation with 71 plus 3j. And if you're not sure what I mean, let me show you. So let me rewrite this now. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my second equation, the r plus j equals 4,659, and I'm rewriting it. And when I rewrite it, instead of just simply writing the letter r, what I want to do is write 71 plus 3j. All right, so 71 plus 3j plus j equals 4,659. So there are multiple different steps here, so I just want to recap what I'm doing here because there are multiple steps here. So again, all I did was I looked at the first sentence, and from that I wrote the equation r equals 71 plus 3j. Then what I did was I looked at the second sentence, and from that I wrote the equation r plus j equals 4,659. The third step then was to take the fact that r equals 71 plus 3j and take the 71 plus 3j and come down here into my second equation and replace r with 71 plus 3j. And I did that, and that's what I see here. 71 plus 3j plus j equals 4,659. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 71 from both sides. And I'm also going to add 3j and j. So 3j plus j gives me 4j. And when I do my subtraction over here, when I do 4,659 minus 71, I get 4,588. So now what I want to do is divide by 4 on both sides here. All right, so when I divide by 4 on both sides, I see that j equals 1,147. So when all is said and done, the correct answer here is A. This video's champion shoutout goes out to a test taker who passed all of the GED tests with high scores and is now starting a degree in computer science, which is awesome. That's a fantastic goal. And I like to share stories like this on my channel because sometimes I know when you're out there and you're in the thick of it and it feels like progress is slow and you just want more than anything to move ahead, and you can't because you have to get the GED done first, and your studying is just, feels like it's taking forever. Right? And so I just like to share stories like this to hopefully show anyone out there who's struggling and, just wants to have this done, just to show you that even though you might be in the thick of things right now, this is where you're going, right? And maybe you want to be a computer scientist, maybe you don't. Everyone has different goals. But whatever your goal happens to be, if you just keep persevering and you just stick with it and you just push through the pain, whatever you're going through right now, just know that on the other side, you're going to be able to pursue that goal, whatever it is. The GED test is just a stepping stone that you have to get past, and then once you're past it, you don't have to look back, you can look forward. Jackson rented a carpet cleaner at 8 o'clock a.m. and returned it at 11 o'clock a.m. that same day. If he paid a total of $27, what was the rental cost per hour? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, just unpause it and we'll talk about it. Okay, so let's talk about the question here. So basically, the first thing that we want to do is count up the number of hours here. So from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is 1 hour, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. is another hour, and from 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. is another hour. So that's 3 hours, right? And then we're going to divide 27 by 3. So 27 divided by 3 is 9. So the correct answer here is C. What's the measure of the missing angle of the trapezoid? Let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. So the key to getting this question right is knowing that a trapezoid is a four-sided plane figure. And for four-sided plane figures, the internal angles add up to be 360 degrees. So what we can do here is we can write 106 plus 76 plus 72 plus x equals 360. So let me back up here and explain why I did this. So we know that a trapezoid is a four-sided plane figure. And we also know that for a four-sided plane figure, the internal angles will add up to be 360 degrees. So we know that these internal angles, if we add them up, will get 360 degrees. And since we don't know what the measure of the missing angle is, I just wrote x. So the name of the game here is to solve for x here. In other words, we want to get this x by itself. So what I'm going to do next is do 106 plus 76 plus 72. And when I do that, I see that that gets me 254. So I can rewrite this as 254 plus x equals 360. So now we're one step closer to getting x by itself. The last step is to subtract by 254 on both sides. So what happens when I do that? I'll find that x equals 106. So the correct answer here is B, 106. So again, the key to getting this question right is to recognize that a trapezoid is a four-sided plane figure, and to remember that for four-sided plane figures, the internal angles have to add up to 360 degrees. So knowing those two things, we wrote this equation right here, and we solved it for x, and we see that the correct answer here is 106 degrees. And if you haven't had a chance to study much geometry yet, I cover four-sided plane figures, and I cover more examples of how to get questions like this right in my GED geometry guide video, so I'll put a link to that down below if you're interested in that. Tim has picked out the next 7 books he will read, but has not yet decided in which order he will read them. How many possible orderings of the 7 books are there? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and then whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the strategy here is to do 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So if you really think about it here, right, initially he's got 7 books. So he's picking out of those 7 books. So if he picks one book, he's going to have 6 books left. So if he picks the second book, he's going to have 5 left, and so on and so forth. So the idea here again is to just do 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which gives us C. And C is the correct answer here. Tara hates country music. However, she matched with someone on a dating app who says he loves 90s and 2000s country in his dating profile. To try to figure out if they'll be compatible in the long run, Tara tries listening to some 90s and 2000s country. She records the number of times she played each song in the table below. What is the mean number of times she played each song? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let's talk about how to find the mean here. So first, you should note that mean is another word for average. So if a question asks you to find the average, or if it says find the mean, know that those are 2 different ways of saying the same thing. So basically, here's how you find the mean. So first you take every number in the data set and you add them up. So I'm going to take 9, 12, 6, 5, 13, 14, and 15, right? And I'm going to add these up, and I'm going to divide by the total number of numbers in my data set. So in other words, I'm going to start by adding up all of the numbers here, and then I'm going to count up how many numbers I have, and that's what I'm going to divide by. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. So again, to find the mean, you add up all of the numbers in your data set, and then you divide by the total number of numbers in your data set. So let me put this in my calculator, and I'll see what I get. So I get 10.57 7, right? And I actually didn't tell you how I wanted you to round this. So as long as you got 10.57, or if you rounded this, it doesn't really matter. As long as you got about this here, 10.57, as long as you knew to add up all of the numbers and divide by the total number of numbers, consider that you got the right answer. And if you weren't sure how to do this, absolutely no worries right now because we're just practicing. I hope this was a learning experience. Keegan only listens to country music. A girl he just started dating, Tara, made him a playlist of some of her favorite songs. To try to figure out if they'll be compatible in the long run, Keegan listens to the songs on the playlist and records the number of times he played each song in the table below. What is the median number of times Keegan played each song? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. So the first step here to answering this question is to put the numbers in order from smallest to largest first. So I'm going to put them in order from smallest to largest. So we have 9, 9, then 11, then 12, then 13, then 16. So if you get a question asking you to find the median and you're given a data set like this on your test, the first step again is to put the numbers in order from smallest to largest. So now that we have the numbers in order from smallest to largest, what I want to do is I want to take the two numbers in the middle. So right here, the two numbers in the middle are 11 and 12, and I want to add them up and divide by 2. All right, so I'm going to do 11 plus 12 divided by 2. So again, the first step here to find the median is to take all the numbers that I have here in my data set, and I want to put them in order from smallest to largest. After I did that, I picked out the two numbers in the middle, and I'm going to add them up and divide by 2. And when I do this, I get 11.5. And there's one last thing I want to note here. So in this case here, we had an even number of numbers, right? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So whenever you have an even number of numbers, after you put the numbers in order from smallest to largest, you want to pick out the two numbers in the middle and add them up and divide by 2. Now, if you get a question like this and you have an odd number of numbers, it's even easier. So when you have an odd number of numbers, you just put them in order from smallest to largest, and then you just pick out the number in the middle and you're done. All right, so again, for a median question like this one here, what you want to do is you want to start by taking the numbers here and putting them in order from smallest to largest. And since we had an even number of numbers here, we picked out the two numbers in the middle, which were 11 and 12. We added them up and divided by 2, and that's how we got the answer. Now, if there had been an odd number here, like let's say we had 5 numbers, in that case, what you would do is put them in order from smallest to largest, then you'd pick out the middle number, and you'd be done. All right, so just keep that in mind for median questions. And of course, if I gave you the same question, but instead of saying what is the median, I said what is the mean, what you would do is you would add up all of these numbers and then you would divide by 6 because there's 6 numbers here in the data set. So that's how you would do it if I gave you the same question but asked you to find the mean. The table below shows the number of hours Tommy slept during each day last week. What is the mode number of hours Tommy slept? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so I didn't actually record the number of hours Tommy slept last week. I just made these numbers up for the purpose of the question here. But anyway, the point is, how do we find the mode? Now, the mode is the most occurring number. So what we want to do is we want to see which number shows up the most. So I see two 15s, right? There's a 15 here and a 15 here. So 15 shows up twice. I see 20 shows up once, 14 shows up once, but I see that 16 shows up 3 times. So the correct answer here is 16. So again, to find the mean, what you want to do is you want to add up all of the numbers in the data set and divide by the total number of numbers. To find the median, you want to start by ordering the numbers from smallest to largest. If you've got an odd number of numbers, you just pick out the middle number and you're done. If you've got an even number of numbers, you have to pick out the two numbers in the middle and add them up and divide by 2. That's how you get the median. And for the mode, what you want to do is you want to find the number that shows up the most, right? And so here we see that 16 shows up 3 times, and so that's why 16 is the correct answer here. Danny is planning to take a trip from San Francisco to Baltimore to watch the San Francisco 49ers play with the Baltimore Ravens. He plans to take his 3 daughters with him. He has a budget of $1,624 for plane tickets, game tickets, and providing dinner. The cost of the plane tickets and game tickets is $1,472 in total, which inequality shows how to determine the amount X that Danny can spend on dinner for each person. Please note that Danny must buy dinner for himself as well as his 3 daughters. So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to here is the budget, right? So the budget is $1,624. And he can't go over that budget, right? So the amount that he's going to spend on the plane tickets, game tickets, and dinner, it can't be more than $1,624. Now, it's okay if the amount that he spends is equal to $1,624. We just don't want to go over that. So I can actually take answer choices A and B out right away. And the reason is because they have greater than or equal to signs, right? So we have a greater than or equal to sign in A and a greater than or equal to sign in B. And like I just said, when we add up the amount that he's spending on plane and game tickets and the amount he's spending on dinner, we don't want to go over 1,624. So the greater than or equal to signs tell us to take out A and B. So what about C here? Well, C has a less than or equal to sign. Now, when we add up the amount that he's spending on plane tickets, game tickets, and dinner, it's okay if that equals 1,624, and it's okay if that amount is less than 1,624. We just can't go over. So C could possibly be the right answer here. Now, how many people does he have to buy dinner for? Himself plus his 3 daughters, which makes 4. And we already know that he has to pay $1,472 for the plane and game tickets. So C is actually going to be the right answer here, right? So there's 4 people he's buying dinner for. X is the amount that he's going to spend on each person. And then you add to that 1,472 for the plane and game tickets. And we know that this has to be less than or equal to 1,624 because he doesn't want to go over the budget. So C is the correct answer here. Tommy, do you have any math tips you want to add? Richard gets paid a different hourly rate at work based on which project he works on. Last week, he worked on one project on Monday and Friday, and the second project on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. How much money in total did Richard earn last week? And I didn't want to put multiple choice answers to this because I wanted there to be enough room on the screen to have this chart on here. So this will just be for you to come up with your own answer on. And you don't have to round your answer or anything. Whatever answer you get, you can just leave that. So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try this out, and then whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the way that I'm going to approach this is I'm going to start by figuring out how much money he made on each day, and then I'm going to add those up. And if you have a different way of looking at this, that's perfectly fine too. This is just the way that I'm going to do it. So for Monday here, I want to do 10 times 9.25. And when I do that in my calculator, I get 92.5, right? So he made $92.05 on Monday. So I'm going to do the same thing here for Tuesday. I'm going to do 9 times 12.5. So when I do 9 times 12.5, I get 112.5. So now I'm going to do that for Wednesday. So for Wednesday, I'm going to do 7.5 times 12.5. And that gives me 93.75. Now for Thursday, I'm just going to list 93.75 again, right? You're just doing 7.5 times 12.5, just like we did for Wednesday. So now we have Friday here. So how much did he make on Friday? Well, for Friday, we're going to do 5 times 9.25. And that gives me 46.25. All right, so again, just to do a recap here, I got all of these values just by taking the number of hours he worked and multiplying it by the hourly pay for each day. So for Monday, I did 10 times 9.25, which gave me 92.5. For Tuesday, I did 9 times 12.5 and got 112.5, and so on and so forth to give me these numbers here. All right, so that's the first step here. And the next step is just to add these numbers up. And so, again, we're just going to add all of these numbers up. And when we do this, we get 438.75. So the answer here is 438.75. If 3x plus 15y equals 99, and 5x equals 9 plus y, what is the value of x? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll go over it. Okay, so this is a system of equation, or simultaneous equation, whatever you want to call this. That's what this question is, and I'm going to show you how to beat it. Now, when I teach systems of equations questions, it's sometimes a little bit tricky to teach them just because there are multiple different ways to approach them. And I'm going to show you first how to beat this question using the substitution method, and then I'm going to show you how to do it another way. And like I said, it's a little bit tricky to walk through these questions just because there are different ways to approach them. But if you want to start a question like this using the substitution method, what you want to do is pick one of the equations and then solve that equation for a variable. All right, so again, to start these questions, what you want to do is pick one of the equations and then solve that equation for a variable. So pick one equation, pick one variable, and solve for that variable. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. The only way that you could seriously go wrong is if maybe you make a mistake in your calculation or something like that. That's possible to make like a calculation error or something like that. But as far as just picking an equation and solving that equation for a variable, there's really no right or wrong way to do that because eventually you'll end up getting the same answer. It's just some ways may be easier than others. So when I see a question like this, right, if it says, what is the value for x? I usually like to start by picking an equation and solving it for y. And equation 2 is really jumping right out at me here because I see the y here and I don't see a number in front of it. So to me, it looks like, at least in my opinion, the easiest way to solve this question is to pick equation 2 and start by solving equation 2 for y. Now again, you don't have to do it this way. You could have picked equation 1 and solved it for x or something like that. And eventually, if you followed it all the way through, you would still end up getting the same answer. But I'm going to pick equation 2 and I'm going to start by solving it for y. All right, so since I've got 5x equals 9 plus y, what I want to do is subtract 9 on both sides, right? So if I subtract the 9 over here, the 9s will cancel out. And then I also have to subtract a 9 on the left side. So I'll have 5x minus 9 equals y. All right, so again, all I did was I picked equation 2 here, this equation right here, and I solved it for y. So I have 5x minus 9 equals y. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to equation 1, and where I see the y, I'm going to replace it with 5x minus 9. So I'm going to now rewrite equation 1, and when I rewrite it, I'm going to replace the y with 5x minus 9. So here's what I'll have. I'll have 3x plus 15 times 5x minus 9 equals 99. Okay, so since we have multiple choice answers here, there are two different ways that I could go through this. So one thing that I could do is I could just take all of these answer choices and I could plug them in for x, and I could keep doing that until I get 99. So that's one way to do it. All right, but what I can also do is I can just solve this for x. So let me start by doing that. So to do that, to solve this for x, what I'm going to do is distribute the 15. All right, so I'm going to just leave the 3x as it is. And so now I'm going to do 15 times 5x, which gives me 75x. And then I'm going to do 15 times negative 9, all right, which gives me minus 135. And this equals 99. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is add 135 to both sides. So what is 99 plus 135. 99 plus 135 is 234. So also what I'm going to do is add 3x and 75x, which gives me 78x. Okay, so again, just to recap here, what I did was I had 3x plus 15 times 5x minus 9 equals 99. And I did 15 times 5x, and then I did 15 times minus 9x. That's how I got 3x plus 75x minus 135 equals 99. From there, I added 135 to both sides. All right, that's how I got 234. And then I did 3x plus 75x, and that's how I got 78x. So I have 78x equals 234x. So what I can do now is divide both sides by 78. So what happens when I divide by 78 on both sides? This hardly looks like an 8, but it is supposed to be an 8. So 234 divided by 78 gives me 3. All right, so if I do it this way, I see that the answer here is 3. Okay, so let me just back up a moment here. So let's say that instead of solving for x, like I showed you, you wanted to plug the answers in. How would that look? Well, what you could do is you would take 3 and you would plug it in for x here and plug it in for x here. So it would be 3 times 3, which would give me 9. All right, so then I'd have plus 15 times 5 times 3, which would be 15, minus 9 equals 99. And so the idea here is what I want to do is just do the math on the left-hand side and see if it actually equals 99. So in my calculator, if I do 9 plus 15 times 5 minus 9, I see that that does give me 99. So that would be another way to tell me that A is the right answer. And so let's say 3 wasn't the correct answer. Then what you would do is you would just have to keep plugging in answer choices for X until you got one that gave you 99. All right, so that's just a different way to do this. So now the other way to do this would be to stack the equations on top of each other. And I sometimes call this the stacking method. Sometimes I call this elimination. Some textbooks I think will call this elimination. It just depends on which textbook you look at. There's different words for this method. But the idea is to just stack the numbers or stack the equations on top of each other. All right, so if I stack the equations on top of each other here, I'll have 3x plus 15y equals 99 over 5x minus y equals 9. And as you can see here, I subtracted 9 over to the left-hand side of this equation. So that's why I have 5x minus 9 equals 9. So in my opinion now, the easiest way to do this is to make a change so that the y's are going to cancel out. So since I've got 3x plus 15y equals 99, if I come down here and I multiply everything in the second equation by 15, then when I add the equations together, all right, the y terms are going to cancel out. So what is 15 times 5x? 15 times 5x gives me 75x. Now 15 times minus y is just minus 15y. And then if I do 15 times 9, I get 135. Okay, so now let me rewrite equation 1 on top here. So that would be 3x plus 15y equals 99. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is add the equations up. 3x plus 75x gives me 78x. 15y plus negative 15y cancels out, so the y's will be done. So then 99 plus 135 gives me 234. And the last step here would be to divide by 78 on both sides, which gets me back to 3. So again, there are multiple different ways to approach a question like this. That's part of the reason why it makes it tricky for me to teach these systems of equations, simultaneous equations questions, because there are different ways to go through them. And you may have done this and you may have done it a different way. And if you got 3, however you did this, if you got 3, then consider that you got the right answer. And if you weren't sure how to do this, absolutely no worries. Hopefully this was a learning experience. These questions are tricky. If you want to look at more examples, I do have a video where I go over more examples of these types of questions. I'll put a link down to that in the description below the video if you're interested in that video. The next question says, what is the equation of a line that passes through the points 11, 4, and 9, 2? And just to save you some time, I gave you the 2 formulas that you might need to solve this question. And just note that on your test, you'll have to go to the formula sheet that they'll give you, and you'll have to pick out these formulas to use. But just because we're practicing to save you some time, I'm just going to give them to you now. And let me give you a chance now, if you'd like to pause the video, try this question out. And if you get stuck, don't worry about it because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, so the first step here is to find the slope. Now, what we see here are 2 pairs of numbers, right? We've got 11, 4, and we have 9, 2. So I'm going to start by labeling my x1, y1, x2, and y2. So when I look at this pair right here, all right, the first number in a pair always has to be an x. So I'm going to call this x1. Now, the second number in the pair always has to be a y. So I'm going to call this y1. Now I'm going to come over here to my second pair, my 9 and 2. Now, this 9 right here, remember, the first number in a pair always has to be an x. So I'm going to call this 9x2. So now I come to the second number in the pair, and remember, the second number in the pair always has to be a y. So I'm going to call this y2. So I always like to start, when I teach these questions, I almost always start by just labeling the numbers here, right? x1, y1, x2, and y2. So when we come up here and use the formula for the slope of the line, we're just going to plug the numbers in. All right, so as you can see, the formula for slope of a line It's slope, which this little m represents a slope. Slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what's my y2? Well, my y2 is just this 2, right? So I'm going to plug 2 in for y2. Now what about y1? Well, my y1 is this 4. All right, so y2 minus y1, it's 2 minus 4. Okay, and so now I want to fill in the bottom here. So what's my x2? Well, 9 is my x2. So I'm just going to put 9 into the formula for x2. And lastly, we have our x1. So our x1 is 11. So I'm going to plug 11 in for x1. Okay, so the slope calculation, it's going to look like this. 2 minus 4 divided by 9 minus 11. So what is 2 minus 4? 2 minus 4 is negative 2. What is 9 minus 11? 9 minus 11 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is positive 1. So we now know that our slope is positive 1. So if you wanted to take note of how to do the slope calculation, if you wanted to add anything to your notes, now would be a good time to do it, because just to save space on the screen, I'm going to delete this slope calculation. So I'm just going to leave this up here for a second or two in case you wanted to add anything to your notes. Okay, so now I'm going to delete it here, and if you did want to look at that slope calculation longer, feel free to just rewind the video. I just wanted to clear it out of the road here so that we have more space to do the point slope form of the equation of the line. So we know now that our slope is 1, right? So I just calculated the slope. All right, so how did I get that slope? Well, I started by taking my points here, and I labeled them x1, y1, x2, and y2, and then I just used this formula, and I plugged the numbers in, and I got 1. So the slope is 1. So now we're going to do the second formula here, which is y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. So I'm just going to start by writing the y. So I have y minus y1. Now what's my y1? Well, my y1 is 4. So I have y minus 4 equals slope times x minus x1. Now what is my slope? Well, remember, my slope is just 1, because we calculated that in the first step. So now I have x minus x1. So what is my x1? Well, my x1 is 11. All right, so now what I'm going to do is distribute this 1, which is pretty easy because 1 times anything is just itself. So 1 times x is just x, and 1 times minus 11 is just minus 11. All right, so then what I'm going to do is add 4 to both sides of the equation. So if I add 4 over here on the left, the 4's cancel out, and then I also have to add 4 over here. So let me rewrite this now, and we'll see the answer. So the answer here is y equals x, or no, we're not quite done yet, x minus 11 plus 4. So there's one more step here. We're almost to the answer, right? So the last thing we have to do here is negative 11 plus 4, right? Minus 11 plus 4, and that's going to give us minus 7. So the real answer is going to be y equals x minus 7. All right, so when all is said and done, C is the correct answer here. So just a quick recap again, the first step here was to calculate the slope. And then once we calculated the slope, we just came down into this formula here and we plugged the numbers in, right? So we did y minus y1 equals slope times x minus x1. That was what we did in this step here. And we just plugged the numbers in and we did some math and we ended up here with y equals x minus 7. So C is the correct answer here. 3 friends are playing a video game. Will's score is 15 points more than Carlton's, but 10 points less than Hillary's. If Hillary has 32 points, how many points does Carlton have? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. So one way to solve this question is to write out equations. And I'm going to start by walking you through it that way. So we know from the first bit of information here that Will's score is 15 points more than Carlton's. So we could say that W equals 15 plus C. Now we could also say that C equals W minus 15. right? So if Will scores 15 points more than Carlton's, we could also say that Carlton's score is equal to Will's minus 15. Okay, so here's what we get from the first piece of information here. Now, what does the second bit of information tell us? Well, it says Will's score is 10 points less than Hillary's. So we can say W equals H minus 10. And what we're really trying to find here is Carlton's score, right? Or how many points does Carlton have? So what I want to do here is start with this equation right here, this W equals H minus 10. And I want to find out how many points Will has. And then I'm going to use that to figure out how many points Carlton has. Okay, so we know that Hillary has 32 points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this equation right here, this W equals H minus 10, and I'm going to plug 32 in for H. Okay, and I'm going to recap this at the end here. So 32 minus 10 is what? 32 minus 10 is 22. So we've discovered that Will has 22 points. And what we want to figure out is how many points Carlton has. So I'm going to take this equation right here, C equals W minus 15, and I'm going to plug 22 in for W because we know that W equals 22. So 22 minus 15 is 7. And the correct answer here is 7. So let me just recap what we did here. So what I did first was I wrote an equation from the first piece of information where it says Will scores 15 points more than Carlton's. So I wrote W equals 15 plus C. Now, if we look at what the question's asking us to find here, right, we need to know how many points does Carlton have. So I took this first equation, this W equals 15 plus C, and I rearranged it so that it's C equals W minus 15. All right, so then I wrote a second equation here, or I should say I wrote another equation here based off of the fact that Will has 10 points less, that Will's score is 10 points less than Hillary's. So I wrote W equals H minus 10. And so we knew Hillary had 32 points, so I plugged 32 in here for H. So I had W equals 32 minus 10, which gave me 22. So I knew that Will's score was 22, and the last step was to use this equation right here, where it says C equals W minus 15. I plugged 22 in for W and got the answer of 7. So that's one way to do this question. You could also just kind of think about it, right? Without writing equations, you could just kind of say to yourself something like, if Hillary has 32 points and Will has 10 less, Will must have 22 points. And we know that Will's score is 15 more than Carlton's. So to find Carlton's, we would do 22 minus 15, which gives us 7, right? So sometimes rather than writing equations, you can just kind of think about it and reason your way through it. But however you got the answer here, if you got 7, that's the correct answer here. So if you got this right, great work. If not, hopefully this was a learning experience. Great work for trying. The composite figure above includes a cylinder and a rectangular prism. If the volume of the composite figure is 15,062.8, what is the height of the rectangular prism? Now, for the sake of time, I've given you the two formulas that you'll need to answer this question, the volume of a rectangular prism and the volume of a cylinder, but just note that on your test, you would have to go to the formula sheet and look these up. But just since we're practicing, just to save some time, I've given you the formulas that you need right here on screen. And let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and then whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. How would you, if you knew what the height was here, and let's say the question was, what is the volume of the composite figure, and you knew the height here, how would you get the volume? Well, what you would do is you would calculate the volume of the cylinder, and you'd calculate the volume of the rectangular prism, and then you'd add them together. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start by looking at how we would calculate the volume, right? So to get the volume, you would do the volume of the cylinder, pi r squared h, and then you would add the volume of the rectangular prism, which is length times width times height. Okay, but in this case here, this is a little bit of a different question because we already know the volume. So we already know that the volume is 15,062.8. All right, so let me fill in everything that we know here in the formula. And this h right here, right, the height of the rectangular prism, we don't know what that is, so I'm just going to leave it as h. All right, so all I'm doing again is I'm just thinking about how I would calculate the volume of this composite figure. The way I would do it is I would calculate the volume of the cylinder, and I'd calculate the volume of the rectangular prism, and I'd add them together. And that's all this formula right here is. Now, I also want to point out that you could do this the other way. You could do length times width times height plus pi r squared h, and that would give you the same answer. All right. But just to start somewhere, I just wrote this formula here. The volume of the composite figure is the volume of the cylinder plus the volume of the rectangular prism. Okay, so let me now start filling things in here. And for this symbol right here, this pi symbol, I'm going to use 3.14. So the GED formula sheet tells you that pi is approximately 3.14. So whenever you see this little symbol pi, just know that you can replace it with the number 3.14. Now, pi it's a number that goes on and on and on. It's not really equal to just 3.14, but for the purposes of the test, just know that if you ever see pi, you can just replace it with the number 3.14. Okay, so 3.14 times r squared. So the volume, if I look at my cylinder up here, I see that r, all right, or the radius is 2. Now, 2 squared is 4, all right? So this r squared here in the formula, I'm just writing 4 here. All right, and so the height of my cylinder right here is 5. So I'm just going to put a 5 here in place of h. And don't worry, I'll recap this again after we go through this. Okay, so now let's add the volume of the rectangular prism. So what do we know about the rectangular prism here? Well, we see that the length is 50, so I can put 50 here for L. And we see that the width is 15. So I can put a 15 in here for the width, but we don't know what h is, right? That's what we want to find. So I'm just going to leave this as h. Okay, so again, just to take a step back here, right? We know that the volume of this composite figure is equal to the volume of the cylinder plus the volume of the rectangular prism. So all we did here was we plugged in all the numbers that we could, and we see that we have an h here. And so now the name of the game is to get this h by itself. All right, so let me do all the math that I can in my calculator. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 3.14 times 4 times 5. So when I do the calculation, I get 62.8. So now I want to do 50 times 15, and in my calculator, that gives me 750. So all I did here again was I did 3.14 times 4. And this 4 again came from the radius, right? So the radius of the cylinder is 2, and the formula calls for r squared. So I did 2 squared, which gave me 4. Then I multiplied it by 5, which was the height of the cylinder. So then I'm going to add to it 50 times 15 times h, right? Because the length of the rectangular prism is 50, and the width is 15. And we don't know what h is, so I just leave it as h. So that's how I got this here. And of course, I just pulled the 15,062.8. I just pulled that along for the ride. All right, so what do I do now? Well, now what I'm going to do is subtract 62.8 from both sides. So the reason I want to do this is because the name of the game here is to get h by itself. So if I do that, 62.8 is going to cancel out on the right side. And on the left side, I get 15,000, right? 15000, and that equals 750 times h. So the final step here is to divide by 750 on both sides. So when I do that, 750s cancel out here on the right, and I see that 20 equals h. So when all is said and done, the answer is C. So again, just to recap here, because I know that this was, there's a lot that went into getting this answer here. Basically, we just had to start by thinking about how we would get the volume of this composite figure. The way that you would do that is you'd calculate the volume of the cylinder, and then you calculate the volume of the rectangular prism, and you'd add them together, right? Which is what this formula right here represents. But we know that this case is a little bit different because we already know the volume here. So what we did was we took this formula here and we plugged in everything we could, and we just did the math until we got h by itself, which tells us that the height is 20. So C is the correct answer here.